One weekend the Spinners and Weavers are here. The Cherokee Indians are here one weekend because Sam Houston had a great affinity for Native Americans. Today the blacksmith is here and I'm here. One weekend we have a fellow over in the potting shed that's throwing pots with the old-timey wheel, you know, that you would spin with your foot. And so every weekend during the academic year there's someone here, and then the Sam Houston Folk Festival is the first weekend in May.
Yes,
and do you remember that?
Make it to that.
Oh, you need to bring the kids up. Yeah. Place is covered up with folks dressed in period costume. And we'll talk about, but what I do is I demonstrate the kinds of tools that you would have seen when they lived here. And as a vehicle for discussing those, I use these chairs right here. You want to have a seat?
Sure.
Help yourself. Are we ready? Okay, cool.
Well, bring the boys over here. Zachary, Kyle, come here.
We want to wait or we want to go? So you used to live in Texas, I mean in Huntsville, and you live in Houston now, right? Well, again, what we do every weekend is we demonstrate the kinds of activities that you would have seen when Sam and Margaret lived in that house right up there from 1847 to 1859. And that's called the Woodlands home, and that home has never been moved. It's sitting right where it was when they built it. They actually moved here from a farm about 15 miles east of Huntsville, a place called Raven Hill. But Sam Houston had been elected senator, one of the first 2 senators from Texas, and so he knew he was going to spend some time in Washington, and he didn't want to leave his family. At that time, Sam Jr. and Nancy Elizabeth were the 2 children that they had out on the farm. And so he bought this place. We have about 17 acres here now, but originally it was about 220 acres. And their cash crops were tobacco and cotton, but they also had vegetables, and they had a lot of artisans on the farm to help keep things going. Obviously you couldn't buy things then at a store like you can now, and as a consequence they had very skilled artisans that did blacksmith work, spinning and weaving, carpenter work, built furniture, those sorts of things. And what I demonstrate today are the tools that you would have seen on the farm, some of the tools that you would have seen on the farm, particularly the smaller tools, those things that they would have used to build cabinets and other furniture for inside the home, as opposed to the larger tools that they would have used to build the home itself. Incidentally, if you took the clapboards off that White House up there, you know what you would find underneath? A log cabin. And that's kind of the way they did it back in the day. In building one of these, the first thing I would do is I would build these spindles right here. And the spindles, before they're painted and before they're actually in the chair, they look something like this. And all they are is a piece of, in this case, red oak, but you can also use white oak, and you can use hickory. Anything that accepts moisture really well and bends a little bit, is flexible, is a good wood to use. And so what I would do is take a piece of wood, like, let's take this piece right here, and when children come by, I say, that looks just like a spindle, don't you think? After I show them the spindles, and they say, no, no, that doesn't look like a spindle. And I tell them, you're right, but you know what? There's a spindle in there. All we have to do is get it out. And so to do that, this obviously would be a little long for a spindle. So what we're going to do is we're going to cut this off a little bit, and that will just take a moment. And I just need to hold it right here. Let me tighten this up. There we go. And we're going to use, to do that, a small saw, and this saw is called a frame saw. And the neat thing about this saw is that if you were to, this string, as you wind it around here, pulls these together and pulls this blade out, provides tension and keeps the blade real taut so that it saws really well, and it goes through wood fairly quickly. And I'm going to just saw this right into, right here. A little noisy, but not nearly as noisy as power tools. So that would be about the length of a spindle. but obviously not the correct size. So we have to use a series of tools to remove the wood that's not a spindle. And the first one that we're going to use is this one right here. And this tool is called a froe. And it's generally spelled F-R-O, but I've also seen it spelled F-R-O-E. The neat thing about this tool, and many tools, are the properties of the tool itself. In this case, the blade is really broad across there. It's thick at the top. It's not particularly sharp, but then at the bottom, it's kind of like a wedge, a long wedge. And then it has a very long handle. And because of the properties, it allows me to take this wood and make it smaller. And what it's doing right here, you can see that that blade is actually not touching anything from this point down. It's splitting the wood, and this process is called riving. And what we're trying to do, you can barely see it, but you can see the striations or the grain going down there. And what this does is it allows me to split this wood following the grain of the wood, and the final workpiece then will be much stronger because we're not cutting across the grain. And again, the properties of the wood are such that I don't have to continue to pound this. All I have to do is use leverage, find the proper fulcrum point, and just twist this, and it will split that wood right out. And just go down. And so that's beginning to get some of it off. And what we'll do is split it one more time with the froe, kind of like this. And again, you just twist it. And again, what it's doing is it's following the grain along there. Hey, bud, we're busting up wood. You're missing it. You know, check this out. So what we'll do is we'll take this now, and obviously it's getting, in terms of dimension, it's getting a little bit closer to what we would want a spindle to be. But we have to use another tool. You know what we use? We use this tool right here, and it's called a froe. But now we're going to use another tool to cut this wood with, okay? You want to watch that?
Yeah.
Cool.
I want to help.
All right. Hold on just a second, and let me get this other tool. And here it is right here. And I'm going to pick up a couple more tools.
This looks like a cylinder.
That's called a spindle.
It looks like a cylinder.
It does, doesn't it? A cylinder, did you say?
Yeah.
This kid's smart. Well, watch this. This tool right here, this is called a shave horse. Okay, looks kind of like a horse, doesn't it? It's got a head right there and 4 legs. Well, what's going to happen is this shave horse is going to hold this wood for me so that I can use this tool. This tool is called a draw knife. And it's called a draw knife because you draw it towards you, and it's very sharp like a knife. Watch this. What we're going to do here is we're going to take some of this wood off. You're watching? All right, and what we're going to do is instead of pulling it straight forward, we're going to do what's called skewing. That's S-K-E-W-I-N-G. And that way it splits a little bit easier. See that?
Yeah.
And it just takes that wood right off there.
There's one in your lap.
Yeah, you want that one?
Zachary.
Now be very careful because this is very sharp.
I want to help you.
Nope,
See, that's coming right off. And we're going to take this down a little bit further. And I have a question that I want to ask you, okay?
What are you making?
I am making, see this thing right here? That's a spindle in his hand. What is that shape right there?
A square.
That's a square. And what is this shape? A cylinder, right? Well, what we want to do is we want to turn this square into a cylinder, all right? I'm going to turn this around a little bit and take some of this off, just like this. Let's do this a little bit more. What do you think? Is this looking all right?
Yeah.
Don't get too close, though. All right.
What is going to happen?
Get hurt.
Remember, this is a square and that's a cylinder. Watch this. We're going to take these corners off like that. See?
Like that.
Here we go. Now, what do we have?
Oh, it looks like it looks like a stop sign.
Well, it does, and you know what that is?
Yes.
That's an octagon. A square had 4 sides, but we added 4 sides. So, but you know what? It's not a cylinder yet, is it? We've got some more work to do, and to do that, we're going to change tools. We're going to get another tool over here. And this tool, see these tools right here? You know what this tool is called? This tool is called a spoke shave, okay? You know what a spoke is?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know.
You ride a bicycle?
Yeah.
Okay, here's the wheel, and the middle is the hub, and the little metal parts going from the hub to the wheel, the shiny parts, those are called spokes. And back in the day, the people who made spokes were called wheelwrights, and they used this tool right here to make spokes out of wood, and that's why it's called a spoke shave. Watch this right here. Watch what happens. Look at that. See how that comes out? And what it's doing is it's shaving the wood down so that we can make a spindle out of it. But we won't make the entire thing. What we'll do is just show you how this thing works, okay? And guess what? We're going to use another type of spoke shave. See how that's flat across there? That's not round, is it? Don't touch it because it's really sharp. We're going to use this spoke shave right here, and this one already is round. It has what's called a radius to it.
Is it sharp?
It's very sharp right there. That blade right there is very sharp. So what we're going to do is we're going to round this over like that. We're going to turn it a little bit and get all the corners off of it. And then I'll be able to show you how it starts out to be a spindle very quickly.
It looks like it's
Now look at that. See how those are kind of the same? Now this one is a little big, and I'd have to take some more wood off of it. And what we would do is continue to take all that wood off until it looked just like this one right here. That's pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, that is pretty neat. You want to keep this?
yeah.
Okay, you can keep that. In fact, I think that may be an issue. Who gets this piece of wood? So once we do that, we have a spindle. And see these over here? Look at this. This is a spindle right here. But we would have to make more spindles. And once we made more spindles, we would just have a handful of spindles. We'd have to make more chair parts. We'd have to make this part is called the arm. And see this part right here? That's called a bow, all right? And see, this is a very long cylinder right here, isn't it? But it's bent. And the way they would do that is they would take a piece of wood kind of like this right here, and they would take all the corners off of it and make a very long cylinder out of it. And then you know what they would do? Well, they have to heat this wood up. And the way they do it is they build a big fire right here in a pot and pipe steam into the bottom of this box. And what they do then is open this box up, put the steam in there, put the workpiece in there like that, and let it steam for a while. And then they take it out after it's been in there for about 20 minutes, pull it out, and you see this over here? Look at this. Bend it around this form. You would take this piece and bend it right around that form. And let's see if we can take that off, and I'll show you what that looks like. We'll take this out right there. There we go. And take this out. And look at this. Ah, pretty neat, huh? And see this piece right here? It's just like that piece right there. That's where that would go. It would go in the chair like that.
But this chair is different than this chair.
It is different, and that they're two different chairs. This is called a triple back because it has 1, 2, 3 parts to the back. And this one is called a fan back because it has this fan right up here. Kind of neat, huh? You want to sit in this chair? Help yourself. So once we do that, then we have another chair part. But guess what? We have to make the seat, right? Because if you don't have a seat, you don't have a chair. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a board, and the board would be this one right here. Does that look like a seat?
No.
No, not yet. So there's more work to do. And what we'll do is we'll put this board right over here, and we're going to use another tool, and that tool is called a plane. And let me show you what a plane looks like.
You have a cowboy hat on your head.
I do.
Why those doors are locked? Why those doors are locked?
See this? This is a plane. And what it does, this is a scrub plane, and it takes a lot of wood off very, very quickly. And the way this works is you push it across here, and that blade catches the wood, and it spits the shaving out right there. And let me show you what that looks like. See? But what happens is it removes wood very quickly, but the problem is that the wood is not smooth across there. Come over here and rub your hand across that. Feel that right there? That's this way. Feel that right there? That's not smooth. And so what we have to do is use another plane to smooth it off, and that's how we get it to be like this right here. And let me show you how that works. Let's see, we're going to use this plane right here,
Yeah.
and watch what happens. Here we go. You ready?
Yeah.
All right. See
Why
that?
do that? Yeah.
That smooths the board off.
I'm gonna put it on the
Because you don't want a rough board, do you? You want a very smooth board. Let's tighten that up just a little bit. Make sure it doesn't come off there. There we go. See? And what we're doing is getting all the wrinkles out of the wood. All the little gouges. Pretty neat, huh?
If you cut it, can you give it to me when you
Right. That's going right across your nose. There you go. That's for you. You want some? There you go. Now, once we do this, it's fairly smooth, but it's not smooth enough yet. You can still feel some of the imperfections in it. So we're going to use another tool, and this tool is called a scraper. And what it will do is remove very thin imperfections like this right here. Let me show you how that works. See this? And you don't go straight ahead like that. You have to skew the wood a little bit. Hi guys, come on up. I was just telling the young men here, this board has some imperfections in it. So what we did is we used this plane to start planing it down. Are y'all familiar with these things? So, cool. You said that with a high degree of assuredness. So, okay, cool. And so what this will do, as opposed to this one right here, you can see the blade on that is a scallop blade, and it really sticks out a lot. And it's called a scrub plane. When this board starts out, it's about 2 1/4 inches thick, and I need for it to be 1 1/4 inches. So that's a lot to take off with a hand plane, particularly one like this. So you use a scrub plane like this, and you can see how that really is sticking out there, and it's going to hog a lot of wood out there. Yeah, quite a bit. And so the thing you don't want to happen, though, is you don't want to plane straight across with this, because what you'll end up with is one side of the board being thinner than the other, just trying to go back and forth. So the way you do it, and I won't do it now because I've already done it on this one, but I'll show you, is you go across like this diagonally and then turn around and go across the other way. And it really ends up not smooth at all. And so you'll take actually a larger plane, and it will be like this one right here, larger in the sense that it's got a longer bed, and it'll ride the top of those ridges and start taking those ridges off, and really get it down almost to the dimension that you'd like for it to be, but it doesn't smooth it off nearly as well as the one that's got a shorter length on it. And once you get the big ridges out, then you can start using this. Using this though, you can see on these blades right here that there's an edge. Some people will chamfer it. I don't ever do it. But there's an edge right there. And so it's going to leave a little tiny ridge on top of this board. And to get that out, that's when you turn to this tool. And again, this is a scraper. And you can see the blade has a fairly severe angle there. It's probably maybe 75 degrees, something like that. And the way it works is it has a little burr on the edge of it. Plus it's got a thumb screw here that actually,
more or less a scraper.
Like a scraper. And they used these back in the day. The first scrapers that they used were not like this though, and I'll show you what those are. But this one works. You know, you skew it a little bit, don't go straight ahead, just skew it a little bit, and it really takes off, you know, really thin shavings. But the way they would do it back in the day, before they had those scrapers, is, and what we would use sandpaper for today, but of course they didn't have sandpaper back in the day, or at least, I shouldn't say that. There was sandpaper, it was really expensive. And they would make it kind of like it's made today with glue on paper with sand on it. Didn't last as long, and it was real expensive. But they did have steel, and so they would take steel like this, and they would turn a little burr on the edge of it with a tool called a burnisher. And you can rub your finger right across the edge of that, and you can feel that little tiny burr right there. And you would think, well, you know, that doesn't really do much. But actually, and you can see, it will start taking the high points off just like that. And what it's doing is it's shaving these little shavings off, and it gets all the imperfections out. The way you do that is you bend it a little bit just to get more of a purchase of the wood. But that really takes it down, and when you finish with it, it's just like you've gone over it with sandpaper. It works better on hardwood than softwood, and that's what this is. This is softwood. But once you get this thing prepared, then you take a pattern like this one right up here and put it on there. This pattern would be for that seat on the right. And trace around it, and then use this little frame saw to take to saw that out. The neat thing about this frame saw, and it saws fairly quickly. You can see right here. I mean, it just goes right into that wood. Particularly for pine, hardwood's takes a little bit longer. But the thing is, at some point, it's going to hit like this. And so they figured that out. They said, well, we'll just make it, you know, like we have coping saws today, and you can just turn that, or turn it this way. And in that case, then you can go all the way around there without hitting the edge of the wood. So they thought of a lot of things like that. But they would put the pattern on there, trace around, cut it out with this, and you would end up with something that looks kind of like this one right here. And let me take this off so you can. And I always leave this back part on here just so I have something to clamp it to the workbench. But obviously it starts out flat, so you have to have some kind of tool to remove this wood right here. And actually a series of tools. The first of those is called a gutter adz, A-D-Z, and that's such a neat tool. It's this one right here. And you think, well, geez, you know, you could do a lot of damage to a piece of wood with this thing. Yeah. The neat thing about these tools is that this was not used by a furniture maker to start with. it was used by a person who made gutters around the house. And for instance, if you look at this post right here, they would take that post, a tree about that size, cut it right in half, and then take this and cut the center out of it. Yeah, and that's how they originally would make gutters. And so that's why it came to be known as a gutter as. But furniture makers like it too. And so what I would normally do is I would take this and before it was chopped out, and I would put it on the ground and I would stand on top of it and chop it out. I've already done that one, and this one's not quite ready, but I have a piece of sacrificial wood here. And you can kind of see where I've already done that some. And I can stand on this. I've never hit my foot before. Yeah, I've never hit my foot, but it takes wood out fairly quickly. And actually, it's good for making a bowl as well. And then you turn it around this way. And, pardon?
Do you make wooden bowls?
You know, I do, but I make them on a lathe as opposed to this way. It just goes a little bit smoother that way than this.
A little bit more modern tool.
Yeah. Well, actually, the lathe that I use, I do have a modern lathe, but the lathe that I use is called a spring pole lathe. And and you know, if you kind of rest your arms on your knees here, then you can have a little bit more control over it like that. But you can see that fairly quickly, you can remove a lot of wood from. Yeah, it's a neat piece of equipment. And these things, since you're working with generally soft wood, with this tool, it stays sharp for a long time, so you don't have to go in and resharpen it regularly.
The oak and walnuts you got to worry about.
Exactly, yeah. But that's how they would start chopping it out. Obviously, that wouldn't be comfortable to sit on because it's still got some rough parts to it. So what they would do, and let me clamp this back and I will show you how that works. They would take a series of tools, starting with this one. And this tool is called an end shave or a scorp. And it's very much like this draw knife, except that, do you have one of these? Would it come down in the family?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I suggest to people, because folks come by and they see these old tools, they think, oh, we got one of those hanging out in the barn or something like that. And I'll tell them, take a picture of that tool, and then on the back of it, write the context of the tool. Who did it belong to? What did they do for a living? Because that tool is going to get passed down, but at some point, it's going to lose who it belonged to. The family history will get lost. But if you do, and antiques are the same way, you know, whether it's an old watch or whatever it is, if you do that, then you can be sure as it gets passed down that people know who it belonged to and, you know, what those people do for a living and those kinds of things. But the blacksmith would take a draw knife like this, and then he would put a radius on it. And obviously the reason for that is as you chop that out, this won't get down in there, but the end shave or the scorp will. And it's very sharp, and of course this one's already gotten most of that rough stuff out, well, all the rough stuff out, but I can show you how it works. And you just take it and pull it, and depending on what the angle is, you get more purchase in the wood, and you'll take more or less wood off. So if I bring it up and just drag it along, you know, it's just taking off smaller pieces.